show up. So we are going to really make an attempt to share our learnings as a big data consulting and services company in what we have seen as best practices and potential pitfalls in the process of big data adoption. I'll do a very quick introduction of the company. So we are vendor neutral consulting and services providers for big data analytics. We've been at the big data game for about 5-6 years now, and that's what makes us differentiated in terms of pedigree and depth of expertise. What we really promise and have delivered to people is low risk acceleration in the process of big data adoption, with a focus on business value. So we're 17 years old as a company. Innovation-led technology services is what our DNA is. 1,500 people. These are some of the customers that we have worked with and are working for currently. Obviously, any solution overall has to have a lot of different components with respect to the enterprise-wide enterprise scope. Big data is definitely a huge thrust area for us, but we naturally extend ourselves into cloud, mobile, user experience, social, etc. And invariably, it starts from one, but it expands into the others. As you can also see, it's horizontal. It's a horizontal service, so there's lots of different industry verticals that we have gathered our experiences from, and that's what we're going to be sharing from today. So what I won't cover and won't talk about is what is big data. I think, have sufficiently inundated with that kind of literature and talks. We won't talk about why big data. And let's have a quick show of hands in which category do you fit here, right? I'm saying you probably either know and believe in the value of big data already. So if you're in that category, raise your hands, please. Yeah? Okay, great. Some of you may have not so sold yet, but you have a healthy skepticism and a positive attitude, but you really want to validate big data for yourself and your company. Yes, anybody like that? Okay, got it. And some of you, in terms of from a CIO community, may just be here investigating big data because there's stakeholder pressure from your peers, from your senior management, from your peers in the management team, or people who work for you who really want to get going with Hadoop really fast and want your approval. Anybody like that? Okay. So we've seen all of these categories, and I'm personally definitely sold on that. Like the IBM person said in the morning, there are big data use cases in pretty much every function in the enterprise that can be enhanced or improved, that are revenue generating, cost reducing, and risk mitigating in nature. So there are powerful use cases in all industry verticals in all those three categories. So I'm starting with the premise that we all agree that enterprises should seriously consider adopting a big data strategy. We're not saying you should do something and implement something, but do a serious evaluation. And let's talk a little bit about what that might look like. So the whole focus is how to what are the mechanics of the process of a good practice of big data adoption. So one of the IT CIOs of a major bank actually made this quote: "Big data strategy is not a journey. It is a journey, not a destination." So you don't get to just stand up a product and then get done with it. It's almost invariably the opposite. You get started when you have a big data cluster, you have data in it, the journey begins at that point. Although there's a lot of due diligence and work to be done until that point. It is a game of balancing the opportunity of big data, which we've all heard about a lot, and balancing out the risk and the cost. And this is what the theme of this talk is: how do you manage and keep the risk and the cost low, and slowly balance up the investment as you get more certainty. So eventually, resulting in ROI that you want. So initially, there would be a high level of uncertainty, and initial level of risk is high. Investment risk is high because you have basic questions like, is this relevant to my organization? What incremental value is this going to add? I'm already doing a bunch of SaaS and analytics and data warehousing BI. what incremental values is going to bring. What use cases should I do? What's going to be the ROI of these use cases? Which should be the first? So there's a degree of high degree of uncertainty in the beginning, and then you want to obviously progress towards certainty and clarity really fast, towards a zone where the investment risk is low. So it would be nice if you could invest corresponding to the risk. So have a small degree of investment initially, and then increase your investment as the ROI becomes clear, as what to do, who to select, what product to implement, how to do it. The more and more becomes clear, you get to invest more. And what would be a strategy that would accomplish this? None of this is rocket science. It's all common sense. But I'm going to get into the pitfalls, which get into how common sense sometimes just seems uncommon. So the first part, you would do a business validation. That would be a gateway into investing more into the technology validation, which technologies to buy, to deploy, and then you actually execute and begin to derive the ROI of big data. So quickly going through that process, in the strategy phase, it is critical to have the stakeholders educated and aligned. IT, business, who is the sponsor, ensure that there is a particular sponsor, at least one or two major sponsors sponsoring this whole initiative along with IT, and everybody knows what to expect. And everybody has a basic sense of education of this technology, what's possible, how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost. So data sources are evaluated at this stage. Use cases are understood and chosen on what to do first, what to do next. And the business case is validated with something like a proof of value project, where data scientists, solution architects, business analysts get together, and you focus on the data for a specific subset. You don't really do it at scale, but you validate that there is some insight in this data first. And there is genuine ROI. And you do it agnostic of technology. You don't care what technology stack you're using. You do the insight and business case validation first. So after that comes the POC. You get approval essentially for a POC, for investing in a proof of concept. And in the proof of concept and planning stage, again, another very, very critical stage in the process before you get to the execution. There you get to see, okay, great, I'm going to do these use cases. There's ROI already proven. What is the technology stack to be used? Do I use open source? Do I use cloud? Do I use my existing vendors? How do I evaluate really objectively all of these vendors, right? Do a complete solution architecture that takes care of different types of use cases so that you're not doing one at a time. And you also look ahead at this stage and anticipate the problems in the production phase. So what kind of skill sets are you going to need? Once you get this thing in operation, you have a 1,000-node Hadoop cluster, 100-node Hadoop, whatever you're planning, right? Do you have the skill sets to operate that thing? Is the vendor giving you ops support? I don't think so. Normally, we've seen situations where you get product support, but operations support is typically stuck with the enterprise team. And things like operating a large Hadoop cluster or a NoSQL product like Cassandra, like many people are doing, these technologies are new, and people, you can't just put a Unix system administrator on this thing. So there are things to think about from an operations and governance perspective, from a skills, people, process, and technology perspective, looking ahead into the planning phase, into the production phase, and then finally you have your production rollout. And typically the POC and planning phase we have seen take between 4 to 8 weeks for 1 or 2 use cases. And depending on how complex that is, it could take longer, but that's what we have seen in various POCs that we have done. So on the production rollout side, what the end goal of that is that you have a big cluster is up, data is ingested, applications are deployed, and the operations process and governance model that you did in the POC and planning phase is in execution. And at that point, you have actionable business insights coming out of your big data investment. So you then get into a feedback cycle and start adding use cases onto this. So this is like a high-level model to ensure that you are managing the risk as you lay lay out the entire adoption process. Because you have a business validation, you have a technology validation, and then you're kind of very similar to the VC investment process, right? Series A, Series B, etc. What happens if you don't go through a structured framework like this? So I'm going to look at strategy pitfalls in each of these things, right? Very quickly. So how can you go wrong with your big data adoption process? What happens if you don't do that? And this is based on real experiences that we've got from people jumping into early or doing some of these things. So a lot of people jump in and do big data adoption, big data rollout, etc., without much thinking. There's probably a set of bright engineers who just feel that they know this stuff, they've done this before, let's just jump in and implement a Hadoop cluster. We have seen major organizations, including some people in the financial services and information services in the financial place, in the financial market here in New York, for example. We talked to a major company that spent about a year and a half just fiddling around and messing with Hadoop. And by the time they figured it out and had productive usage of it, it was about a year and a half. Just because they did not have enough skills, it's like a research project. You learn about it as you go. It's trial and error. So you want to cover all those kind of eventualities beforehand. There are similar themes ahead as well. So no cross-team collaboration. We've seen this, of course, all the time. There's a major company, for example, that actually sells a very powerful marketing analytics product to CMOs of large enterprises. Can you believe that the marketing team of this organization, the corporate marketing team of this organization, is doing a Hadoop POC and failing at it multiple times? First of all, they don't even need that technology because they own a product that does marketing analytics at scale. So it was funny to us when we see these kind of stories from outside. In a trade show recently, in a conference, we saw 6 different teams from the same organization doing their own big data projects, doing their own little installations, and nobody wants to talk to each other. They all want, of course, be the first one to do it, but it violates the basic paradigm of big data itself. The big data paradigm is to consolidate as a big platform, enterprise-wide, that has all the data assets leverageable across the enterprise. If you do multiple little silos of Hadoop clusters, what's the point? And it may be relevant in some cases. It's not a religious issue, but maximize the collaboration across groups, right? Some people get into POCs without doing an ROI. Now, that works if you're doing a cost reduction, IT transformation type exercise, where it's almost a no-brainer that there's going to be a cost reduction. So if you're offloading an Oracle database or any RDBMS database for reducing cost, offloading ETL or offloading your analytics jobs into Hadoop, that's a cost reduction story. You don't need to do an ROI for that or an elaborate ROI for that. That gives you what? Sometimes up to 90% savings per terabyte for DWBI. But we've also seen situations where elaborate POCs are done for 6 to 8 weeks on certain technologies, and then the VP of marketing gets on the call. The price tag is $1 million for a text analytics and sentiment analysis tool. The VP of marketing goes, so the IT team has gone and done all of this, and the VP of marketing says, hey, what's the ROI on this? We're going to spend $1 million. Great tool, great product, awesome technology. Nobody has an answer for the ROI. So that 8 weeks of work just gets stopped, and the vendor gets told, come back in a year when we figure that out. So anywhere where you're looking at big data for predictive analytics, for revenue, new revenue stories, new markets, new insights, when it's not just IT transformation, it's good to do some sort of an ROI exercise up front. We've seen multiple cases of build it and they will come. And information management teams build out large clusters, get in 10 years of transaction data into the cluster, hoping that the business teams are going to obviously come and start using it. They're not. They don't know the use cases. They need to be sold. A major technology company did this. They then hired 2 architects to evangelize the platform internally in the organization to different teams. So that kind of thing you would do upfront, where you have at least 2 to 3 business sponsors funding or aligning with IT on this so that you have a set of use cases already planned out in terms of a roadmap. That brings me to another point. But we got a call from a VP of finance at a major Hollywood studio recently. They're launching a show in the fall. And he says, can you make us a Hadoop? It's like, what? So this call comes in, literally. He found us on Google, called us in, and said, can you get us going on Hadoop? And we need stuff done in like 2 weeks. Okay, what do you need? So we have the show, we're releasing the show on TV, and we need you to analyze all this data from the last year, and we really need all this done in a week and a half if possible. So the lesson there is the basic education part, right? Get the stakeholders educated on what to expect, how does this technology work, how fast can you really make things happen. Yes, it is possible to probably do something in 2 weeks, but after the infrastructure is deployed. It's possible to do something on the cloud immediately, but you got to understand all of those things. So if expectations are raised up in an unfair way, they will drop and there will be upsets. It's good to have more than one use case thought through before you start the journey. Definitely is a great thing to do to start with one use case. Good cases where we have seen there are 30 to 50 envisioned use cases even when you're rolling out the first one. The advantage of having a good sample of use cases thought through is that you will build a platform that really is an enterprise-wide platform. If you do just batch analytics, for example, you may not take into account use cases that need real-time analytics or near real-time. So one use case with no roadmap at all is not a good idea again. Start with one use case, start small, but definitely socialize the idea with multiple stakeholders and get that alignment up front. Quick things on the POC and planning stage. Skipping an objective evaluation process where you're really evaluating multiple vendor technologies is not a great idea. You might end up buying something because you like the vendor, because the vendor has a very, very good pitch. What we've seen is that in the big data ecosystem, there are multiple products, multiple credible options. None of them is a silver bullet. Each of them solves a subtle different use case. So it's better to do a full-fledged objective evaluation of the vendor ecosystem before you jump in. There's a strong tendency that you will default to current vendors. You may be an Oracle shop, you may be an SAP shop, Informatica shop, Teradata shop, whatever shop you are. There's a tendency to stick with the same vendor. It may make sense in many cases, but it is good to take a look at the latest offerings from other competing vendors as well. You might have one or two vendors in the mix, but let's say you're looking at a text analytics platform and you don't have one. Your favorite vendor may not have the best text analytics capability or ETL capability for big data. You might have to go to another vendor and have a dual vendor situation. If you don't build a platform up front, if you don't have the vision of building a platform, you will end up building spot solutions. So you might start with a Hadoop cluster here. Somebody else will ask you for a near real-time use case where you need fast ingest. You'll start building another product over there. You'll put MongoDB here for document databases. So if you don't think through a full platform that has all types of scenarios dealt with, then the scenarios are easy. Batch analytics, real-time, near real-time, and text analytics. Maybe graph databases, right? So these are the popular 4 or 5 different problems that a big data platform would solve. It's better to think through a platform where products and components are talking to each other. If a vendor can give you all of those pieces, great. Otherwise, ensure that you get interconnectable pieces which can build a logically complete platform. I would point you to articles about how Disney has built out their analytics platform. There have been talks, there have been articles written up. He's done a very good job at building out a what's called a polyglot platform that addresses all kinds of capabilities in an enterprise-wide big data platform. So not considering open source would be a mistake. At least consider it, give a serious evaluation. Hadoop, of course, is open source. It is going to save you a lot of money. So relying only on proprietary commercial products we've gone beyond that. In terms of skill sets, overextending current teams. Folks, big data and certain aspects of big data are new. You don't have this, you may not have, most likely you may not have all the skill sets in the organization. 10 more minutes? Okay, good, thanks. We've seen tendencies of or hopes that you can just train your BI team to become predictive analytics guys or to become text analytics guys. That won't work. So overextending your current team may be a tendency, but you do need to look at hiring new skills and acquiring new service providers or new people in the organization. Operations readiness planning is critical in the POC and planning phase, where once you get in, you will have issues, and you have to plan those things up front. And those issues are, of course, the data quality, governance, that stuff that you're already looking at. But what happens when all of the data gets into one big cluster? You're going to have a more complex issue. Governance, user access, security, and ops support in general, DevOps support, operations support, daily operations support. These are issues that you would have to contend with in the POC and planning phase. So in the production phase, finally, you're looking at the pitfalls being insufficient skills and experience. That's kind of the most obvious one. You might have SIs that you have now that are having long-term contracts, etc. They may not be up to speed in terms of big data. We will, of course, all SIs will make claims, but it's up to you to really evaluate whether the specialized expertise that you need is available in your SI organization or your services organization, right? Big data test strategy. So Impetus being very pro on research, this is one of the research topics that we are working on right now. What does it take to actually do a full test strategy for a big data application rollout? At the infrastructure and platform level, things could fail. At the application level, things could fail. Do you have any kind of thinking on the test strategy for testing some of those scenarios up front? Typically not, from what the experience we have seen. So it is good to do some thinking on the test strategy before the rollout. So in terms of overall architecture, we have seen analytics sandboxes, exploratory environments, and production environments sometimes getting mixed up. Things like Hadoop actually gives you the ability to do both. And it's recommended that you have a dedicated analytic exploratory environment distinct from a production environment. And a technology like Hadoop actually makes that possible, where you can have these big data technology platforms as a viable candidate for an exploratory environment, and you can have a separate replicated version for your production. There may be a tendency to do cost reduction use cases. These are the low-hanging fruits, but don't stop there. I would definitely encourage you to look at real revenue enhancement use cases, etc. There's lots of cost savings that are low-hanging fruits, but being content with that and stopping there would not be using the power of big data adequately. Underestimate the operations task. I've kind of gone over that multiple times now. So this is the overall kind of recap of the best practice that we have seen for the big data rollout. Kind of recapping all of the items in each phase.